Oh, you sure are a crazy son of a bitch.
Yeah. You think I'm crazy?
Yeah.
Are you calling me crazy? You think I'm crazy?
Yeah.
You want to see crazy? I'll tell you. Now, that's a real badge. I'm a real cop, and this is a real gun.
We interrupt this program to bring you a special report.
This is Cheapseat Reviews.
No one in that movie is likable.
So I think I just saw it before it made an impact. I obviously, there's a naked girl, but
much like The House, I feel like the saxophone lick is a character in this movie.
Hello, and thank you for listening to Cheapseat Reviews, the podcast that explores the Hollywood film industry for the greater good.
Gary Busey's voice saying the greater good.
Yeah, I don't really know how to impersonate that, but it is a very distinct voice, isn't it?
It is.
Just
my teeth aren't big enough.
Yeah, that's fair. This is episode 404, 404, error code 404. And today we're talking about Lethal Weapon, 1980, 1987, yeah. 1987's Lethal Weapon. I am Sean Allred, and joining me tonight is Andrew. Was ramming a police car into the house always part of the plan, Jimison?
I figured that's the best way to get someone's attention. You just
need a distraction, so just ram a car into your house.
Yeah.
Okay. That sounds fun.
It's Gary Busey. You need to go like full hog to get that guy.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, you have to. Cause you have to. And making his cheap seat, again, no Sam tonight. If you saw Twitter recently, you'll understand why, but no Sam tonight. And that's okay. We miss him, and we're thoughts and prayers are with him and his family. Making his cheap seat reviews debut is Darin. Man, those machine guns had a lot of bullets. From the Nostalgiacast Podcast.
Wow, I like that. That's a good. They did have a lot of bullets, didn't they? I think Riggs is the only guy that reloads like the whole movie.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, he reloads his pistol a lot. I mean, they stayed pretty true with his pistol, but those machine guns, those automatic weapons, man, those things went on for days. Just
an endless supply of metal killers.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And that's okay. That's perfectly fine, because this is that kind of movie that we don't really care. So let's pull up a chair and dive into Lethal Weapon. Oh my gosh. So obviously this is not a new movie. This is a movie that we've all probably seen many times. But Darin, you jumped on this at the start. I don't even know if I even gave this as an option. I think you just said, hey, let's do Lethal Weapon.
I'm getting so old that my memory that sounds like me. I'm pretty sure that you gave me a list of things, and Lethal Weapon did jump out just because I talk about it all the time on our podcast.
Yeah.
Just as one of those, it was the first R-rated movie I'd ever seen. It's obviously made an impact. I mention all the time that I was an only child, and my mom was just trying to raise me on her own. And so she would just lead me with movies, and I specifically remember she rented Friday the 13th and Lethal Weapon, and she left me alone with the VCR. And she went off and worked, and I watched those two movies in a single night. And that explains why I'm the way that I am, I guess.
Nice. So, it's funny. I think when I reached out to you to do this, I think we did specifically look in the 80s for films. Because your podcast is called Nostalgiacast. And please tell our listeners, what is Nostalgiacast, the Nostalgiacast podcast?
Well, my best childhood friend, Johnny, and I, we put a podcast together. It's just, you grow up with these movies and you have a connection to them, and you either, it's kind of like long lost relatives. Like you lose like a connection with them, or you lose contact, but you're always in the back of your mind. And then, something comes up, you see like a yearbook photo, or you get like an old family photo, and you're like, oh, I remember this. I have nothing but good memories. And then let's say you meet that family member and he's like an alcoholic jerk. So or he's the nicest guy you've ever met. It's hard to tell. So it's kind of like that with movies. Like I was born in 77. Johnny was born in 78. And so the movies that we grew up on were made in the 80s. That's why a lot of them kind of call out to me. I didn't officially become a movie buff until the 90s. So I know the 90s movies a little bit better, but I am very partial to the 80s movies. So we take these movies from our childhood, like say that you see a movie in a Walmart $5 bin. You're like, oh, I remember that movie. And so you pick it up and you watch it, and it's either the greatest thing it's just as great as you remember, or it's like, what the hell is this? Like, why did I ever like this movie? What memories do I have of this? So it can go either way. And so again, 80s movies are what I'm more kind of partial to, since that's what I grew up on. But yeah, that's basically what we do. We just tackle these movies and we see if they're different when we don't have the rose-colored glasses on.
Very cool. Right on. One of the episodes of yours I listened to was your Princess Bride episode, and
right.
I was walking at work listening. Usually when I'm listening to shows, I'm either driving or at work, and I had this kind of great moment where I like fist bumped in the air. I can't remember if it was you or your co-host that made the point that. So we reviewed it on our show not that long ago. At least it feels like it wasn't that long ago. I guess it's been about 3 or 4 months, but. One of the comments was that like the set looks kind of cheap, right?
Yeah.
And then I made the comment, and it was like during the episode that I had this thought of, well, maybe that's what the kid, because we're seeing it through the eyes of the kid. So maybe that's how he would imagine it, right? Like he wouldn't look polished or whatever. He's a 10-year-old, 11-year-old kid. And I can't remember, one of you said the exact same thing. And I'm like, yes, I'm not alone. This is great. I am vindicated. So it was kind of cool.
Well, I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but that is a thought that I've had about the movie for a long, long time. Growing up with The Princess Bride, it's a great movie. Obviously, the William Goldman dialogue, the acting is awesome. But there was always just something nagging me in the back of my mind. I was like, this movie just looks too cheesy and too cheap. Like it's not as great as everybody thinks it is. But then you kind of hit that moment in your life where you're like, well, hold on. Like this whole world, it is pictured to the mind of this 12-year-old. And that goes from everywhere from the acting to the music. So why did everybody like this? It kind of like subconsciously like appeals to your inner child. Because that's why you would look at it that way. And that kind of raised it from, this is a good, funny movie to like almost, a masterpiece level where there's different levels going on. I just thought that was a very, interesting way of looking at the movie other than the just the dialogue and the acting. So I will definitely take credit for making that comment.
As you should. Yeah.
Yeah. And like I said, it was just, I always liked the movie, but it was just kind of cheesy. And then, like I said, it just has that one moment where you're like, well, yeah, that does work from that level. And so it does kind of raise your appreciation for it. Yeah.
But, and to add some
Yeah.
context for listeners who are listening to this episode because of you, Darin, and that's like it was Andrew's first time seeing the movie, like as an adult. So like I can see why as an adult seeing it for the first time, you kind of, oh, okay. I mean, I'd only seen it like 4 times or something like that, whereas Sam and Jesse, our guest, like they've watched that movie 50 times. So like to them, it's kind of like what it is to you. It's this like warm blanket of a thing that you watch when you, whatever. And I've watched it like all the way through maybe twice or 3 times. So anyway, but
once people, Andrew, I agree. Once people tell you it's the greatest movie of all time and you finally settle down to watch it, it's rarely going to live up to those expectations. So I understand.
Yeah, that experience for me was American Pie. I was told all through high school that American Pie is the greatest. It is our generation's Breakfast Club.
Breakfast Club?
Yeah, like this is the thing that defines us. And so then I watched it. None of the jokes were funny. No one in that movie is likable. Everyone sucks. Like it's not like I didn't resonate. Like the only good guy in the whole movie is his dad.
Yeah.
And you're like
Eugene Levy, right?
Gene Levy. Yeah. He's Eugene Levy. He's great. But it's like everyone, like all the teenagers suck. So anyway, I don't want to get into that. There's a whole episode that I did on another podcast where my whole purpose for being on that episode was to rip that movie, which was a lot of fun.
Well, I think even Spike Lee gave like a blurb one time when he's like, this is what comedy is, a dick in a pie. Like, this is what people think is funny. Yeah. So yeah, I see where that's coming from.
But we're not here to talk about those movies. We're here to talk about Lethal Weapon, 1987's Lethal Weapon. Honestly, I didn't expect to go on those kind of tangents, but that's okay. But this is a movie, and Andrew is going to tell you what it is, just in case for some reason you don't know what Lethal Weapon is.
Two newly paired cops who are complete opposites must put aside their differences in order to catch a gang of drug smugglers.
Yeah, okay. It's the odd couple that are cops. I like it.
Right.
So this is a Richard Donner film, and writers are Shane Black and Jeffrey Boehm. And it wasn't until this viewing where I realized, oh, right, Shane Black. He's the guy that directed Iron Man 3 and makes all of his movies at Christmas. Because that's what he does. But
yep.
So, Darin, you messaged me earlier before the show that you wanted to talk about Richard Donner, and then we'll have a chance to do our 5-word reviews here in just a second. But go ahead and lay it on. Where are you wanting to go with this?
Well, Richard Donner is one of those directors. He means a lot to me. And so, some of the episodes listening back, and by the way, congratulations on 400 episodes. I was going to say that at the top of your
thank you.
Top of us recording here. But yeah, that's a feat. And I enjoy everything that I've listened to so far. But, talking about deaths that hit us hard, Richard Donner was a death that hit me pretty hard. And I think that's because, when you're a fledgling movie buff and you start to fall in love with movies, I say on our podcast all the time, the first director's name that I ever specifically learned on purpose was Steven Spielberg. Because watching Jaws, I was fascinated by that movie. That's the movie that made me fall in love with movies. And I was fascinated that it could scare me like that I could identify with the Brody character like that. And what was it about the direction and the story? So my brain was like, what is it about this movie that's making me feel this way? And that's what made me fall in love with the medium. And so I was like, who directed this? What did he do? Like, how did he do it? Like, what was the whole purpose? And then the second director that I learned was Richard Donner. And that's because of Superman, the movie. My mom recorded, I don't know if either of you guys remember or any listener, but when ABC would show the movie of the week, Superman the movie was so long, and they had like an extended cut, so they split it across 2 nights. And my mom recorded that on VHS, and I remember becoming obsessed with that movie, like I was obsessed with Jaws, and just watching it. And again, it was, you guys both know the movie, the scene where Clark goes and he has that kumbaya with Jor-El or whatever, and then he becomes Superman, and it's that shot of Christopher Reeve. And all of a sudden you see him take off from the ice and he flies at the camera and swoops past it and does like a turn. And I remember specifically that moment, like my eyes like almost popping out of my head thinking, what? Like he's flying, like Superman is flying. Like there wasn't anything, my 6-year-old, 7-year-old brain, whatever, there wasn't anything that argued with that. It was just flying. And again, it was like, how is this director making me feel this way? What is he doing? How did he do? And so Superman, I became obsessed with it. And Richard Donner, like, he's so, and I mentioned to you, Sean, that I wanted to listen to the commentary for Lethal Weapon just because I missed that booming, like, grizzly bear voice of his. And he was just this big bear of a man that was just so caring. And you guys talk about the when you did your Lethal Weapon 4 episode, you talk about like the Goonies, you talk about Lady Hawk. He does so many different, it's hard to nail Richard Donner down because he did so many different genres and so many different types of movies that he wasn't just pigeonholed by. And they all have the same kind of, I don't know, light on its feet kind of a flavor to them. So they feel like Richard Donner movies once you find out that's who it is. It's just, there's nothing specifically, Spielberg has his, you can definitely tell it's a Spielberg movie sometimes. You can tell it's a Fincher movie. Richard Donner doesn't necessarily have that, but he's just got a very loose way of handling actors. And it's just very joyous watching his movies. And so, I don't know, Richard Donner is a guy that I adore. And especially being a fan of the Dark Knight trilogy and hearing there's a special feature on the Dark Knight trilogy Blu-rays where he's talking with Richard Donner and they're like having a moment where they're comparing Superman and Batman Begins. And just that's where Nolan got his appreciation and just, listening to Donner talk, and he's very humble. And he was like, oh, I'm humbled that you would take me as an inspiration. That was just the kind of person that he is. Again, like I say, he's a big, loving bear of a man. I miss him to death. Just even though he was in his 80s, 90s when he passed on, it's just, you could tell people loved him.
And I think they loved him because of the classics that he created. And there's not many of his movies that are not really well done.
Yeah.
I mean, I love the movie Maverick. And that's a completely different genre. I mean, it's a comedy that if you take that and say, the movie Timeline that he did, which I also kind of like. Other people think it's dumb, but I kind of like it. But I mean, just two complete opposites, and he does them both very well, in my opinion.
Yeah, Maverick too. We're tying that back to Princess Bride. That's a William Goldman script, and it has the same kind of humor to it. One of the very first lines in Maverick is, when he's hanging from the rope.
And it just been a shitty week from the start.
Yeah, that line I died laughing in a theater just because, this is like a Western Princess Bride. And so, but again, like so many different genres that he does, but they all have the same kind of loosey-goosey kind of breath of fresh air kind of tone to them. I think he's just underappreciated. But again, like when he passed, I was like, like that's a name that means a lot to me. I'm going to miss that, even though we have his movies to watch and he hadn't made one in a while. But he's just a great presence on this earth, I think.
So I'm staring at his IMDb page, looking at the films that he's directed, and while doing that, I was also looking at Shane Black, which led me to there is going to be a Lethal Weapon 5. So it is already in progress. Mel Gibson is directing it.
Yeah. I'm wondering if I'm sure it's probably going to be one of those where they bring in younger people to.
Yeah, it has to be. I mean, these guys, they would definitely be retired cops. There's no reason why they would be active duty cops, right? You're not a cop for 50 years, right? Anyway.
And let's face it, Riggs is not going to be like Commandant. I mean, this is.
No, these guys are going to be like retired, living on a whatever, and someone, forces them for one last hoorah, whatever. But my point is that I'm looking at Richard Donner's IMDb list and realized that if I were to take the movies that I've seen the most, and if I actually knew what the number was, it would probably surprise you to say that it's not what you think it is. Because I probably did watch The Goonies as a kid probably 20 or 30 times. It was a movie that we had on VHS, and I watched it a bunch. And my dad watched it. He would watch it with me, and there was a part in that movie, and Andrew knows exactly what I'm talking about, because as music majors, there's a part when they have to play the organ. And she's looking at the chords on the back, and the last one, she says, I can't tell if it's an A sharp or a B flat. And of course, you get to say the joke, if you get it wrong, well, I'll be flat. But that's the same note. It's the same note, right? Like that's literally the same note. Now I know like diehard musicians are yelling at me, but Andrew and I know it's the same note. So like that always annoyed my dad. Yeah, it sounds the same. It's the same key on the piano is the point. Yeah. It always drove my dad crazy. Like she should know the difference, and I guess maybe that's a joke, an inside joke for music people, I guess.
Deep cut, yeah.
It's a deep cut. But if I were to tell you that it would probably be a toss-up between either The Goonies or Maverick or Radio Flyer.
Yeah.
I watched Radio Flyer to death, and I don't really know why, but I always really just loved that movie. It's a hard movie to watch. I mean, it's about a man beating his children. It's rough, but
Tom Hanks is at he opens and closes the movie, right? Like he's an older version of one of the kids.
He's the older version of Elijah Wood.
Okay.
And it wasn't until, within the last 10 years that I learned that Adam Baldwin, like Jane from Firefly, he's the dad. Now you never see his face on camera. They never show his face, which I always thought was a really cool kind of directorial choice, because that way you don't look at that actor and go, that's the guy that beats children, but I think it actually makes him more menacing that you never see really ever above his shoulders.
Yeah.
I think that's really interesting. And I think it's because, again, Tom Hanks doesn't remember, Elijah Wood's character doesn't remember what he looks like. He just remembers the actions. I think that's really interesting. Anyway, Radio Flyer, if you want to go watch a movie about kids fighting back against an abusive father, who also
got a good Hans Zimmer score. I know that.
Oh, he did that score?
Yeah, that's a fun one.
I didn't know that. Yeah, that movie. Like, if I were to tell you that it's about a movie about two kids who build an airplane to escape an abusive father, like,
yeah, they use the power of imagination to escape abuse.
Yeah, and build.
I think they remade that as Sucker Punch, right?
Yeah. Oh, jeez. All right. Anyway, enough tangents. Let us talk about Lethal Weapon, the first one. You know what we didn't do, and maybe we can later. We can talk about which ones are our favorite of the quartet. Because I'm always interested to kind of hear people's opinion on that. So, but let's do 5-word reviews. So, Andrew, why don't you lead off?
Okay, I've got 2, and there's a hyphenated word here. This is the second week that I have 2 5-word reviews.
I'm impressed.
I don't normally follow that rule. So, 80s buddy cop action flick goodness.
Okay,
that's number 1, and then number 2, beginning to a fun franchise.
Good.
This movie and the whole franchise, but I know we'll talk about this one specifically. They're just fun. Mm-hmm. It's Sam's not with us tonight, but he always makes the comment, "This is a fun movie. I had a lot of fun with this." And this is one of those movies that you just have fun with. And it's well done. I will say that looking back at it now, the story and as far as the plot is concerned, that part still holds up. But there are some things like that's really some cell phone that they pull out a couple times in this that looks like something that you would wear on your back.
The suitcase that they have to carry.
Yeah. But things like that age it a little bit. And then there are some audio things that bothered me, where they recorded some lines in a studio and then put them in, or recorded some lines later and put them in, or overdubbed some things. Like there's a scene where Murtaugh is singing, and you can tell it's like, he did that separately in a studio somewhere.
Where they're at the kitchen table, the rapping, right? The beatbox.
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about, right?
So, other than that, though, it's a fun thing. And all of the acting from the main characters, anyway, is really well done, I think. Gary Busey, this might be his finest role. I haven't seen him in a whole lot, but he makes a great bad guy, and I think he's been a bad guy in a couple of different things. But this might be his better role before everything went downhill. So before the horror nightmare 3D action, whatever that was, that commercial he did, the interview he did. But so I don't have a whole lot to say about this. I did take a couple of notes, which was the cell phone was one, but then the line that mommy says policemen shoot black people, that could not be more poignant today. And it shows this was done in 1987. It's sad that we have not changed as a society in a lot of ways. And that, unfortunately, still holds up today. So I did take that down. And then his wife that passed away, Victoria Lynn, that name sounds like a porn name. And that's really all I got.
Yeah, so I definitely bumped on the my mom says cops shoot black people, and the problem with the movie is this is like the only part of the movie that didn't age well, is that it's played for as a joke, because there's no, Like even Murtaugh is just stammering. Like he doesn't know what to do with that. And he's like, how about ice cream to distract the children? You know?
Yeah.
And I know this is not the movie to have social commentary. You know, this is not that movie. And in 87, I don't think we were ready as a nation to have that conversation yet, but
it'd be a lot less funny if it didn't come from a kid. You know, if it was adults chat, like because the kid's kind of innocent. So that's just the reaction on their your Riggs and Murtaugh's faces. I think that's what kind of sells it as a comedy moment. But I did write that down. I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
Some of this movie ages better than we think.
Yeah. I mean, like it's the same thing, right? It's the same thing from Kindergarten Cop when the kid says, mommies have vaginas and daddies have penises. Like, you know, because it's a kid that says it, like that's what makes it funny.
Yeah.
And the inverse is true also. When you have Betty White in Lake Placid say, if I had a dick, I'd tell you to suck it. Like that's amazing that they got Betty White to say that, you know?
Yeah.
All right. Darin, what's your 5-word?
My 5-word, I've got buddy cop thriller par excellence. Just
nice.
Because, you know, the buddy cop thing, you had In the Heat of the Night, say, you had 48 Hours, like that kind of gave birth to the whole buddy cop thing. I think Lethal Weapon, it kind of gets kicked a lot because it started a lot of the tropes that we're most familiar with, but it also does it. It's interesting listening to the commentary because when Shane Black wrote the script, he went through different permutations, but he didn't specify their race. It's just Riggs and Murtaugh. There's no reason. And Donner he tells a story about how Marion Doherty, the casting director, when they were looking for Murtaugh to cast him, she was like, yeah, what about Danny Glover from Lilies of the Field, or not Lilies of the Field, from The Color Purple, you know, where he played the bad guy. And Richard Donner says, well, my first reaction was, but he's black. And then he goes, but me being a liberal, that was an eye-opening moment because that made me more aware that like race, you know, it doesn't matter. Like, and that's not something that should be focused on. And what I loved about the script is they don't make a mention of, that they're different races. And I don't know if it's a trope, but I like that it's, you know, the white guy is the reckless guy for a change. If you look at 48 Hours and Eddie Murphy's the criminal and Nick Nolte's the racist, kind of the do-gooder or whatever, they flip it. So Murtaugh from the beginning is a respectable family man and he's living like a great life and his family is all well-rounded and it's Gibson doesn't have a handle on things. I just like that it's such a refreshing, you know, kind of switch from like 48 Hours. And that's where a lot of the joy comes from. A lot of the notes I have here, I love that like Murtaugh's family, they just accept Riggs, like without question. Like they bring him in, he's a member of their family just from the beginning. And they all feel like real people. They don't feel like sitcom characters. They feel like they've got like hopes, dreams. They're all very warm. You want to hang out with the Murtaughs. And it's just, again, because it doesn't, the opposite of 48 Hours, because it doesn't make the race a thing and it just focuses on the job at hand and them being friends. I think that makes it timeless in a way. And it, you know, because we don't have to focus on that. It kind of sets all that stuff aside. So they just focus on the scripting. That's the main takeaway. And I really like, you can tell that they have a bond. You can tell that Gibson and Glover, they like each other. And the chemistry's hard to get.
Oh yeah. And you can tell as the series goes on, as the franchise goes on, that friendship is still there. And they work well together. One thing that I thought of as you were talking about the family and how they're not sitcom-y, I really love how also throughout the franchise, the house itself, Murtaugh's house, is a character.
Yeah.
Like it becomes a character in the movies.
One of the things I noticed for the first time, you know, when you first see Murtaugh, like he almost slips on the eggs or whatever, but their house is already being remodeled. Like there's a part of the wall that's ripped apart. And I'm like, oh my gosh, they've been working on this house since the very beginning of the franchise.
Yeah.
You know, and they keep like building and adding different things. So you're right. It definitely becomes a character. And to the point, again, in the commentary, I think Donner's being kind of interviewed by somebody and the guy's like, oh, those stairs look familiar. Isn't that where Jet Li like kind of dove over for the first time? You see him kick somebody. He's like, yeah, so it does. I like that point, Andrew. It does become a character. It's interesting.
Oh, Jet Li. One of my favorite, we will one day probably do all 4 of these films on the podcast. I think that would be fun to do.
Yeah.
And, but one of my favorite little nuggets of trivia was so that Lethal Weapon 4 was Jet Li's American film debut. And they're asking, a couple years later, like, so what's it like working in Hollywood now? And he goes, it's great, except everywhere I go, I'm the bad guy from Lethal Weapon.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm known as the guy that tried to kill, Mel Gibson. And he's like, I'm a really nice guy. So,
yeah. Well, it's the same thing in your Ghostbusters episode, William Atherton, people like trying to pick fights with him on the street just because he played a bad guy character in a movie. It's so weird.
Yeah. Yeah, that is funny because there are other like bad guy, character actors. I mean, like you look at Gary Oldman and go, well, he was a bad guy in a lot of stuff, but he was also a good guy in a lot of stuff. And he's obviously a really good actor. So like, he just seems like a guy that if you met on the street, like if you just said, hey, can I shake your hand? Like he'd be like, yeah, okay, what's up? But then there are other bad guy characters where you're like he just said, it's like, oh, you're the asshole from Ghostbusters and Die Hard. You deserve to get punched in the face.
Kick. Yep.
Yeah. All right. My 5-word review is, I got to scroll up here in my notes, is the perfect buddy cop film. Just nice and simple.
Hard to argue with that.
Yeah. It's just,
I think me and Andrew said that exact same thing.
Yeah. Basically, we've all said kind of a permeation. That's a word of the same thing, is that it's a buddy cop and we like it. I did take a lot of notes though, but I don't think that is indicative of me not liking the movie. I just think that it's indicative of I've seen this movie 4 or 5 times. So I don't have to last week when we did Nightmare Alley, I took like 5 notes because I was so engrossed in the movie. I was afraid to look at my screen. Whereas, this time it was like, I can watch and just have a good time and take a note. And like, it's not really, I'm not going to miss anything because I've seen this movie enough times. I haven't, the third one's probably the one I've seen the least. I'll admit that, but, yeah, but my notes on this were just a lot of fun. Like my first note is I have no memory of the naked girl jumping. And I think that's because most of the times I've watched this movie was on TV, like TBS or TNT. And that would have been edited pretty heavily because her boobs are all over that opening scene.
Mm-hmm.
They are. And I did think about that as I watched it. I thought the same thing because I remember it because I've watched this on a streaming service before, but most of my memory, like you, is from like a TV edit. And I was thinking as I saw that, how did they do that for TV? Because there's not a lot you can show.
Yeah.
Yeah. Probably zoomed in. When I was thinking, I was watching it with my wife and I was like, you know what? Like, I think I saw this when I was 10 or 11. And I asked her, when is the point where boys like start noticing things like that? Because I remember watching Romancing the Stone in a theater in 1984. And there's a part where Michael Douglas and Kathleen Turner, they slide down like a mudslide, and Michael Douglas lands in the middle of Kathleen Turner's legs. And I remember as a 7 or 8 year old, like it stirred some feelings in me that I was like, I don't know what I'm thinking here. But then, like I said, watching Lethal Weapon at home by myself on VHS, it doesn't, as a 10 or 11 year old, it didn't strike me as anything memorable. There was this naked woman on screen. And so I was like, did I just miss? Was it like the next year that my libido kicked in and I started noticing things like that? You know what I mean? Because I didn't remember. That's a good way to pin that. You would know. Right. So I think I just saw it before it made an impact. I obviously, there's a naked girl. And again, it's weird that my mom would show that to me and think it was fine. It's weirder that she would show Friday the 13th to me, where there's more of that and there's murders and, gruesome, gory murders, stuff like that. But I don't know. It's the way Donner shoots it. It's just very, very matter of fact. It's just a girl. She was up to some business before. She does a line of coke and she just jumps off the building. She's not really thinking about it. So I don't know if it's sexualized in a way that would make it memorable in that way. I think when you see Mel Gibson's butt in the next, that's more sexualized than her jumping off the building. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
You're right. Well, I mean,
did notice that he is either shirtless or naked in a lot of this movie.
Yeah. Well, you got to give the note that I had here is, wow, nudity for both the girls and the guys. You know what I mean? So he was a good looking piece of meat. I remember back in the day.
Yeah. Well, we saw that last week in Nightmare Alley, where we got to see a little bit of Bradley Cooper's meat there. So,
yeah.
Let's see. Okay, so
you should brand that. Yeah.
So I've watched. Okay, so we all watch TV, and we've all probably watched a couple cop shows here and there. And the one cop show that I watch routinely is called The Rookie with Nathan Fillion. And one of my actual cop friends, who's a neighbor, I was like, "Hey, you're a cop, so you probably don't watch cop shows." And he's like, "Yeah, not really, because they're all just such garbage." And I said, "But there's a show called The Rookie." And he goes, "Actually, I like The Rookie because that's actually pretty close to what cop life is like." I was like, "That's kind of cool," because they use different verbiage. Like the word squad car is what idiots like us say, and TV people, they don't. It's not called that. It's called their shop. It's their office. It's where they work. So you said like in movies where you see like, they always say, "Get in the squad car." No, it's called the shop, and the computer inside the shop isn't called a computer. It's called their box. We'll send the information, look it up on the box. So they have this different kind of whatever. And also in the show, they get a little bit more into the weeds on certain procedures. Like, so my point is that there's a moment when they go to the pool house, right? They go to the house with the big fancy pool. And then the guy shoots them, and Murtaugh drops him. He shoots him in the leg, right? And Murtaugh goes over there, and he's yelling at him to pull his hands out. "Let me see your hands." But the guy never complies. And all I could, so I literally wrote this. I said, I hate to say it, but Roger is a bad cop. He should have secured the guy before putting his weapon away, because he literally holsters his gun. He's all like, "Look at me. I saved the day. Now we can," like he's like having a happy dance. And then the guy, pulls a gun out of his pocket, and then they have to shoot him and the whole thing in the water. But like all I could think of is you have literally, that's your job, is to get down there and take his hands from him. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, there's a couple moments where the cops in this movie are really bad. I mean, they're just bad.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's kind of a trope that we see in a lot of buddy cop films is a lot of the cops are not good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, character wise, that comes almost directly after Riggs jumps off the building with that suicide guy.
Yeah.
And they have that big fight. And so Murtaugh's like, obviously he wants to shove it in his face that this is how you do a job. You don't do all this other, but it's the character interplay, even though they're kind of shying away from the more technical aspects of it. It's because when you see Gibson and Glover or Riggs and Murtaugh talking, I like that when they're talking shop or talking about the case on the boat, you don't really focus on the details that they're talking about as much as you focus on these guys are getting along. Like they're starting to they're finding a common ground and they're working towards a common goal. And that was a note that I had here is some of the exposition, when they're talking about, they might have laced the drugs or things like that. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I never noticed that before because I'm too busy noticing the chemistry between the actors. I think that's a sign of a good movie or a good direction or good writing when you don't notice that exposition, that you're getting information. I don't know. I like, what did you guys think of the chemistry between them and how the script layered that through?
I thought it was kind of brilliant, honestly. I like Shane Black. I like the way he writes. I'm also like one of the 8 people in America that like Iron Man 3. I'm
one of those.
And not just because it was filmed in North Carolina. I have to remind people of that. But, and boy, did I try my hardest to get on that film set. I tried. I had a couple people work on it. I'm like, do you need a guy for like one day? No, sorry. Okay. It's Marvel. They're like, no. So anyway, but I like that. I do like that we're getting, it's, I like that we're getting exposition while they're also having a dick measuring contest at the shooting range. Mm-hmm. That's a lot of fun, right? If you're
that's got to be the best scene in the movie. I remember. Do you guys ever? Sometimes there's a certain scene in a movie that you watch it and you're like, this is a movie that I'm going to be watching for a long, long time. Like that because of that one scene when he does he puts the smiley face in it. Such a good character moment. Just the way Murtaugh's like, oh, shit. Just the way that it's such and the sad thing is, I don't know if you talking about the TV edit, they cut that part out because obviously you got to worry about ads. It cuts to the part where you see him, like Riggs brings his thing and it's just one shot and Murtaugh goes, do you sleep with that thing under your pillow? And Gibson said, Riggs says, I would if I slept. And that's when they cut to the next scene. And it always drives me crazy because I'm like, that's a great character building moment that sells the movie, and you cut it out. I don't care about the expository stuff. I want that character stuff. That's what I love this movie for.
I think I know why they cut that out, and that's simply because of a few times in the film. There's that moment, and then there's the moment where Murtaugh is standing in the out in the desert, out in the field, and it seems like it takes forever for anything to happen. You just hear the music, and there's nothing happening as far as in the film. And the same thing happens there in the shooting range where Riggs is humming to himself. But like you said, to me, that is building his character. It's showing it who he is. Like he's a little bit nuts because he's sending that target out to the end of the range and they're bringing it back. But it does have it does cause a little bit of downtime if you're not really thinking about those character building moments.
Well, so the part that I like about the scene, specifically to Darin's point, is with the character building, is that, or the character showing, whatever, is that there's two parts about it. One, to your point, Andrew, that it's slow. This is the gag that Family Guy would do later when Peter Griffin trips and falls and he hurts his knee, and he just does the noise back and forth. But like 4 times is okay, but when you do it 15 times, that's when it's funny. Like, so it's not just the fact that he pushes the target out; it's the fact that we, as the audience, have to stand there and awkwardly wait for him to send the target all the way down, and Murtaugh is like squinting to see it. Right, that's the gag, and then he's so cocky as it's coming back. Right, but it ties back into the previous scene. Right, this is the previous moment, because we leave them. Riggs is leaving Murtaugh's house, and they've had the fun family dinner, and then they're kind of having this moment at the curb where Riggs goes super dark when he's like, when I was in the war, I shot a guy at 2,000 meters. I don't remember the line, but like there's like there's like 8 or 9 guys in the world that can do that. So he says this story that's really cold and chilling, right?
Okay, it says, when I was 19, I did a guy in Laos with a rifle shot at 1,000 yards in high wind. Maybe 8 or even 10 guys in the world could have made that shot. It was the only thing I was ever good at. So, yeah, you're right. It does, and that ties back in later at the desert where Riggs is all the way out there with his sniper rifle. He's able to take out the bad guys. And so, yeah, that is a character. There's a difference between show not tell, or tell not show, or show not tell, or whatever. Riggs tells that story, but then at the shooting range, you see him do it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But they play it as a gag, so it feels comfortable, I think. I don't know. It sells it instead of it being, instead of, this is them showing that what he's talking about. The way that they make it comedic and funny, that's one of the charms of this movie, is that's what you kind of, all your the things you push up against in the movie, they fade into the background because the movie's just so charming and it's so funny. And again, I think that's the Donner influence in the, Gibson and Glover kind of pairing off each other.
Yeah. One thing that I never noticed until viewing it this time, and this says a lot about the whole franchise and me, I guess, is that Riggs is the lethal weapon. Like, I didn't get it until this viewing. And there's a line in there somewhere that mentions that, and I'm sure Sean probably caught it, or captured it. But also on the movie poster, it says 2 cops. Glover carries a weapon. Gibson is one. Yeah. Yeah, and so I never put that together until this viewing.
Interesting.
Last couple notes I'm going to cruise through here before we do clips. And that is, one of the other things that I hit on that, again, doesn't age well, and that's because we live in a time now where we are more aware of mental health now than we have ever been in our society. So I like the fact that they write in a character of the lady shrink, the lady, head doctor, right? But she's just completely ignored. And they even do the thing where she's like, there is something wrong with Riggs. And the captain is just like, he's fine. He's a guy. He's a blah, blah, blah. He's whatever. And she's like, he's suicidal. And he's like, I tell you what, if he kills himself, then we'll know that I was wrong. And like, again, it's played for the laugh, right? I mean, Darin, like you just laughed. Like it is a joke,
Yeah.
But like, once again, the movie has an opportunity to actually talk about mental health. And this is a trope that it passes on, right? Like, this trope is done even to the farther degree in Bad Boys 2, where, Martin Lawrence says to Will Smith, he's like, "Did you go see your shrink?" And then he remembers him basically having sex with the shrink, right? And so then he goes, "Yeah, I saw my shrink." And he goes, "You're supposed to work your shit out, not bang your therapist." So like even that movie is, doing the same thing. So it's just,
well, and that just goes to, those scenes would not be in movies today, or they would be handled differently today.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And you watch as the franchise goes. The other note I had here is the series, even though they're all R-rated, it becomes more family friendly as it goes on. I mean, I can't recall a movie where your hero, one of the first scenes you see is he like freaks out of those guys at the Christmas tree lot, and you can tell something's not right with them, and all the other cops know it. But then it cuts to the scene with him in his trailer, and when is the last time you saw a protagonist put a gun in his mouth? You know what I mean? And it sells. The thing that sells that moment is not that he doesn't go through it; it's that he all of a sudden he breaks down. Like the female doctor, who, by the way, I think her name is Mary Ellen Trainor. She was married to Robert Zemeckis for a little bit, I think.
No.
But you hear her talk about it, but then you see, we know what Riggs is going through. You know what I mean? So it's more of it's a show, not tell, where we don't really talk about it, but you see this stuff in action. And one of I don't know if you guys felt the same way. The thing that I really, really loved about the movie is Riggs and Murtaugh need each other. Murtaugh's kind of tight-laced, and then having Riggs in his life kind of makes him come out of his shell a little bit, and he's able to kind of loosen up. And then Riggs, who gets maybe the deeper character arc, is seeing Murtaugh's family. It kind of grounds him, and it gives him something to live for. And so they need each other. I just thought that instead of it just being these two guys that meet and then they pair off, they actually, you can tell that these guys are, friends for life, that kind of thing. I don't know. I liked, he's not cured at the end, obviously, because Lethal Weapon 2, Riggs reverts back to that kind of dangerous side toward the end when he's pushed too far. But I like that the Murtaugh character is able to give Riggs that purpose, that to the point where he gives Rianne the bullet at the end and says, "I'm not going to need this anymore." Or, when Murtaugh says, "If you think I'm going to eat the world's worst Christmas turkey by myself, you're crazy." And Riggs says, "I'll let you in on a secret. I'm not crazy." And they look at each other and Murtaugh's like, "I know." So I really like that relationship. And that's what sells it more than the action for me, or more than like we talked about, the expository stuff. It's just their friendship is just, I think that's what makes this movie last. It's why it makes it work.
And their friendship goes from like 0 to 100 pretty quick. I mean, they bond pretty quick, which I think is kind of cool. And it almost kind of feels real life, because when you literally have people shooting at you, I think that kind of intensifies everything, because at the beginning, like they're doing the scene where he's like, "Put the gun in your mouth," and like, "I'm hungry, I'm going to go get some food." And then, so then like the next scene is like the thing at the pool, right? And so at that point they're like, okay, they're kind of okay. And then like that night, like it's that night he's over at their house having dinner. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Like, it does
and
go.
Rianne's and like hitting on him.
Yeah. So I mean, but it's pretty. You're right. This movie is all four of these movies are based on their friendship. Right. And then, of course, you add in Leo in the next film, and then you have the buddy trio. But Leo is just there to be comic relief in a movie that already kind of has that. So, but he's funny, and that's fine. I was just blown away. So you mentioned the psychologist and, her name. So I'm looking at her IMDb credits. She passed away in 2015 at age 62, which is really sad. It's really young. But she's been in so many movies that I've seen. Oh my gosh. Like, this is the woman that has been in everything. So, for example, she's in Romancing the Stone as the sister. And she's in Goonies as Mrs. Walsh. And of course, she's in this. And then she's in Die Hard. So I saw Al Leong in this movie, right? He's the torture guy. I'm like, oh, hey, he's the Die Hard connection. And then I see her. Oh, we have another Die Hard connection. And then there's the only other black cop in the force that's talking
Grand L. Bush. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, wait, he's one of the FBI guys. So like this thing
he's one of the Johnsons. Yeah.
He's one of the Johnsons, which I love that line. I mentioned that when we recorded this episode, when he gets on the phone, right? And he's like, hey, this is Agent Johnson. No, the other one.
No, the other one.
I always wanted to know what that person said. Is it the white one?
Yeah.
The old one? Like what does he say? No, the other one. Like I always wanted to know. Anyway, so she does Die Hard and then Scrooged, which also directed by Richard Donner. So like they're obviously friends. She's in Ghostbusters 2. Obviously the rest of she's in Back to the Future 2 as uncredited. Like she's in so many things. This is great. Death Becomes Her. She's in The Little Giants. Oh my gosh, she's in The Little Giants.
Oh yeah,
that's too funny. As Karen O'Shea.
Yeah, she's the wife of Rick Moranis.
Yeah. Yep. Oh, Congo, Executive Decision.
Yeah.
Like I have seen more of her work than I have of almost anyone else. This is crazy.
Yeah.
And then Freaky Friday in 2003. That's funny. All right. Anyway.
So talking about characters, Rianne, I think was the daughter's name, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Tracy Wolf. Watching these movies, I always thought she was so much younger because she's portrayed as younger, but she's only 4 years younger than Mel Gibson.
Yeah. And 14 years younger than Danny Glover, I think. She was 27 years old when she shot.
27.
Wow.
No.
I mean, she looked like an 18-year-old in this movie.
Yeah.
So this is funny. So talk about a woman that so she does the 4 Lethal Weapon movies and an appearance on The Cosby Show, and then takes a break for 12 years. No, that math's not right. For 22 years.
Ooh.
And then shows back up in a couple episodes of some stuff, an episode of Blue Bloods, and an episode of SVU. I guess that Lethal Weapon money ran out. She wanted to do something else, but like
DVD sales were low for a while.
Well, I mean, she probably was doing. I mean, I guess look at her bio and see what she's been doing. But I mean, I say good for her, right? Like you don't have to be in Hollywood. Like if that money's coming in, then do your thing. Whatever. I hope she made money off of us watching it. So I don't think that's how it works, but that's fine.
No, we can dream.
Yeah, or they can. The actors. Anything else before I move on?
Did you guys like how Gary Busey was kind of the tonal opposite? He was like even though he's blonde and in white a lot of the time, he was the dark mirror for Riggs. They both had this. They're both kind of nuts. You know what I mean? And I like that they had that dichotomy going on there. And then you have the General McAllister, obviously, who's the older guy who's in charge and everything, which kind of mirrors Murtaugh, that kind of thing. I thought that was interesting. And then obviously you have the trope of Mel. Is this where Mel Gibson's penchant for being tortured comes from?
Oh, I don't know. Is that
because he's tortured in Conspiracy Theory. He's tortured in Braveheart. He's tortured in Payback. He directed Passion of the Christ, which is a torture porn movie. All the way through. I don't know. I just think it's interesting that this might be where his love for torture scenes came in.
I haven't thought of that, but that's interesting. I don't know.
Yeah.
I just feel like it's a trope that you have to have in a movie like this, where one of the characters has to get beat up and tortured and whatever. It's just, it just kind of feels like, somebody's going to have to do this.
You guys also talk about in Lethal Weapon 4 about the saxophone and the Michael Kamen, Eric Clapton. Did you guys, and it's hard for me because, like I said, Friday the 13th made an impact because I just thought that a lot of the stuff was so fake that it didn't really bother me. And I don't remember my reaction to Lethal Weapon, but since Lethal Weapon has been a mainstay, obviously it made a positive impact on me because I'm still watching it and still nostalgic for it. But when I watched it in the, 80s or 90s or whatever, and hearing the saxophone when it was normal back then, I don't hear it as dated. I don't know if you guys, it's probably my kind of thing, but it just kind of suits. You have the guitar that plays when Riggs is around and the saxophone signifying Murtaugh. I don't know. I have the note that it's, how do you tell it's an 80s movie? You hear saxophone, or an 80s song, you hear a saxophone in it. But to me, it doesn't date it because it's always been there.
I don't know.
Well, much like the house, I feel like the saxophone lick is a character in this movie. Like, it's just like you said, it's kind of the theme of Murtaugh, and it's just, it's in every installment.
To the point where I think there's a joke in Last Action Hero where there's a cop that gets killed and he looks at the camera before he dies, goes 3 days to retirement, and you hear the saxophone.
Yeah,
because that was Michael Kamen too. But.
Yep.
Well,
yeah, and it was funny. So I watched this with my wife, as I almost always do, but my mother-in-law is in town, and she watched this with us as well. And both of them cued in and wait a minute, Eric Clapton?
Yeah.
And I said, well, Michael Kamen did the music, and I guess there's just a song at the end or something that Eric Clapton did. But Michael Kamen, I mean, I can now I got to think about it. Michael Kamen, my favorite score he did. Well, I'm going to get this wrong. Didn't he do? Robin Hood. Okay,
yeah, Prince of Thieves. That's a great score.
Yeah, that is absolutely probably my favorite of his. I mean, I know he's done a bunch, and I like him a lot. And I'm looking at his IMDb now. Yeah, he's known for Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, which is, I mean, it is really good. It is a really good score. And
the Everything I Do song that he co-wrote, obviously.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a what's his face did that song, so that's fine.
Bryan Adams. Yeah.
Thank you. I couldn't think of his name.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, Michael Kamen. Yeah. Now my brain is engaged. Yeah. Band of Brothers. So freaking good. The Iron Giant.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many other ones that I can go down. The other one that really kind of trips my trigger is Mr. Holland's Opus. Big. And he also did Die Hard. Of course. Yep. Like I for some reason it always kind of felt like Die Hard and Lethal Weapon are like Star Trek and Star Wars. Like, you don't have crossover. I mean, like Simon Pegg was like the first crossover between those two universes, right? I mean, that was after 40 something years of a franchise, and like these people are passing back and forth between these two movies. I'm almost surprised they didn't do a crossover, as much crossover, actors and whatever they shared. Mm-hmm. Anyway, anything else? I'm going to play some clips. I'm trying to make sure I have all my notes, kind of anything that I really said, other than the fact that the cops do kind of suck in this movie.
I think that's all I have, I think.
Okay. The last note I did write is this. So Murtaugh does the thing with the gun, right? He does the head shake, whatever. That means he
cracks his neck.
He cracks his neck, which means the next shot he fires is going to be dead center.
Yeah.
He shoots the driver, and the general is in the car, and he flips over, and then he gets hit by a bus. And all I could think of is, I'm all for killing the bad guy, but that bus driver now thinks that he killed this car. Like, that man is now traumatized.
Because it explodes. Yeah. He did his part.
Which, I have to say this, Andrew knows this, I'm contractually obligated. So the general, that actor, he is our Star Trek connection. He was in an episode of TNG. So
Mitchell Ryan. Right?
Always connects to Star Trek.
Everything.
Mitchell Ryan. In fact, when I first saw him on screen, honestly, my first was Liar Liar. That was the first thing that came to me was Liar Liar. But we also just saw him in Gross Point Blank.
Yep.
Then Gross Point Blank. There's some other stuff. Oh, and West Wing. He's also in West Wing, which I love dearly. So probably too much. In fact, I think it's almost time for my yearly rewatch.
Oh.
Yeah,
glad Lethal Weapon could do that for you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Could reconnect me to West Wing. In fact, I think I saw somebody just post on Twitter or Facebook something like, my 13-year-old decided that he wanted to get into politics, so we're watching West Wing together as kind of a way to kind of ease him into politics, and of course people are like, that's great, but the problem is that people on that show act way too nice than the way politics are now.
Yeah.
So, all right. Time for some clippy clips. Now, I'm going to capture this.
I'm too old for this shit.
I was going to do it. You also know that I'm going to capture it. Andrew mentioned earlier, he teased it, that I'm going to capture the, if you say the name of the movie. But I also captured the whole scene for two reasons. Darin, you don't know this about me, but I worked in film for a little bit. I was a sound guy, not a very good one.
You mentioned that,
but I have done it before. And so but as a sound engineer, as a profession, I'm always a little more tuned into when audio kind of is a little janky in your movie. Now, this is going to sound worse hearing it this way than it was in the movie, and I'll explain why in a second.
Fowle also said you're heavy into martial arts, Tai Chi and all that killer stuff.
I suppose we have to register you as a lethal weapon.
Now, there's the name of the movie. Boom. But that's just Murtaugh talking. It's the same actor. But the reason why it sounds so different isn't just because one is recorded in the garage live and the other one is in a studio. But when you cover for the close-up, right? The camera is now close-up on Riggs or on Murtaugh. You can get the microphone a lot closer, right? So like those other shots, it's probably a lavalier. He's wearing a lavalier. They had those in 87. And maybe they had a boom also kind of nearby. It's the parking garage creates a problem because you can only go so high because there's a roof there. So that's why it sounds.
Fowle also said you're heavy into martial arts.
Like that's why you hear all of the room. But when we get to him leaning on the car,
killer stuff.
I suppose we have to register you as a lethal weapon.
So it's a different microphone. Everything's different. So when I was watching it, I thought, boy, that's very different. But I also know that that's why, right? Yeah. Like that, there's a reason. So I don't fault the movie. There's a little inside baseball on how audio works. Okay.
Wow. Cool.
I love this line because this is a very intense moment. We're talking about suicide, but Murtaugh still makes the joke.
Don't nibble on the barrel, pull the trigger. Go ahead, pal. Be my guest. Go ahead if you're serious. You shouldn't tempt me, man. Put it in your mouth. Bullet might go through your ear and not kill you. Yeah, under the chin.
Yeah. Like he's making like a cartoon joke, right? The bullet's going to go through one side and not the other and not kill him in this intense moment. I like it.
Yeah.
So then there's this one.
I'm too old for this shit.
There you go. Say it again.
Yeah.
I really hope, Andrew, your game isn't how many times does he say that?
He says it again at the very end, right?
Yeah, yes.
Kind of an ADR. Yeah, ADR.
Yeah. Let's see. I had to splice this one up because it was really long. To Andrew's point earlier, there's a lot of moments of just kind of looking and emoting quietly, subtly. So normally this clip was like 40 seconds long. I cut it down to 9. Here you go.
Hey, Riggs.
Yo.
You really like my wife's cooking?
No. See you tomorrow.
I just like that. But again,
you know what's great about that scene? I was just thinking they have the moment where he says, you really like my, and you cut it out, but they have this long moment where they look at each other. But the moment I liked is Danny Murtaugh's face changes. Like he knows what's coming. Like, and I don't know. It was a fascinating moment for him. And then that's when Riggs goes, no. And so it sells the humanness of it. I don't know. Just great. It's hard to get. It's hard to get that in movies. And they got it so well in this.
Yeah. Yeah, the movie isn't in a hurry, which I actually kind of appreciate.
Yeah.
This is a funny line.
Oh, shit, Roger. What?
The guy who shot me. The guy who shot me.
Yeah, what right?
The same albino jackrabbit son of a bitch that did Hunsaker.
You sure?
I'm sure, man. I never forget an asshole.
Never forget an asshole. But again, trope, right? He was shot by a shotgun, went through a piece of glass, and they don't take him to the hospital. You know, like any other cop.
Bulletproof vest. They keep you from harm.
Yeah, I mean, he says, "Ow, that hurt." You know, I mean, like at least they played that up. But it's just like, again, any real cop would go to the hospital. There would be 40 other cops there. It's a crime scene. Like they just leave. It's okay. And I missed one. Crap, I missed this one.
Like Popeye. Like Popeye. A tattoo like Popeye. Oh, not like Popeye.
Sean, my favorite funny line in the movie that's also a very writer relief. I don't know if you caught this, but I like where they're on the boat and Rianne comes out and they're talking about her date. And Murtaugh's like, which one is that? And she says this one. And he goes, the kid with the pits in his head and his face. Yeah. And she goes, those are dimples. And he says, those are pits. When he smiles, I can see through his head. The answer is no. But then later, after, like you said, when Riggs gets shot, there's an APB that comes out and Murtaugh's like, we need you to go over there, Sergeant, because we want to check this out. Like there was someone that was killed. And Murtaugh goes, yeah, he's probably like blonde headed with big dimples. And the person goes, how did you know that? And so I don't know, as a funny line, it works, but then it also works because it sets you up for a revelation later on. And I think that's a Shane Black thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. And then there's this one. It's 16 seconds, but it's worth it.
I don't think Burbank the cat's gonna like this.
I'll put 5 on the money.
I got it.
I'm too old for this.
I like it. All right.
Rule of threes. Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, you're about to hear a train. I don't know if you've heard that on our podcast before. Who was it on your podcast that lived by a train?
Oh my gosh, you must have listened to an old episode. That was Cornelius. Yeah. He used to live by a train. It was every night at about an hour into the episode we hear a train. Man, it's Andrew. I don't know what's happening. I feel like it's it's 2019 or 2015 right now. This is crazy.
I still have trains. Weird.
Oh, this is amazing. This is seriously, I'm like having flashbacks of Corny being on the show. This is great.
Yep.
Well, we're getting ready to play the game. And so this game this week is being sponsored by...
Hey, Bubblies. I'm Jen, and I'd like to invite you to my bubble. My streaming bubble, that is. And it's the podcast where I talk about the shows that I love with the people I tolerate. Every week, I tolerate a friend so we can obsess over our favorite streamable contributions to pop culture entertainment. So join us every Sunday on a podcast player near you and keep streaming. Bye.
Some more bad news. Ready?
All right. This is the game called Hey, Did You Notice? This is a game where Andrew asks you and I, Darin, questions back and forth. Best out of 5 wins. These are not trivia questions. These are questions of things did we notice in the movie, just to see how well we were paying attention. Most points win. You win nothing, but that's okay. Go ahead, Andrew.
All right. So the first question goes to Darin. Here we go. After the naked girl, Amanda, falls to her death, we cut to Murtaugh's house. What vehicle drives in front of his house?
Oh my gosh. I know it's a car. Wow, these questions are already not fair. I don't know. A Chevrolet, let's say. Wow.
Sean?
I'm going to guess it's a delivery van, right? Isn't it like the milk delivery or the newspaper delivery?
You are correct. It is a milk truck. Yeah. Milk van.
Now, that's a little unfair because...
They don't have those anymore.
Well, one, they don't have those anymore. But two, I have seen it more recently than you have. I actually saw that specific scene because I was looking for clips, and I almost pulled the happy birthday bit. So I literally watched that scene about an hour and a half ago.
Me too. All right. All right. This question goes to you, Sean. When Murtaugh pulls up to the dead hooker scene, Amanda, where she has jumped, a report of 1041 comes across the radio. Dispatch says this is a drunk white female, drunk, nude, and singing. How tall was she, and how much did she weigh?
Oh, man. She was 6 foot tall, 220 pounds.
Darin, do you have
those are my dimensions, by the way.
5'3" and 180. Wow, that's good. That's good attention to detail.
She was 5 foot tall and 350 pounds.
Holy smokes!
Yeah.
Wow, way off.
There you go. Yeah. All right, so we go back to Darin. While Riggs and Murtaugh enjoy a hot dog after meeting with Hunsaker, there is a movie theater in the background. What movie is showing at the theater?
Lost Boys.
That's right.
This year's hit, it says. I remember specifically. So, like, did Donner direct that? No, but I think he produced it. That was a Joel Schumacher movie, I think.
There we go. So we're 1-1. Sean, we go back to you.
Okay.
On the boat after dinner, Murtaugh and Riggs have a couple of beers. What brand of beer do they drink?
Oh, geez. I don't know. It's not like a I don't know. Is it going to be a primary brand like one of the Anheuser-Busch ones? I don't know. It's California, right? It's got to be something weird, right? So I don't know. I'm just going to say Coors Light, but I know that's not right.
We're paring it down.
Really?
Oh my gosh. Good guess. Nice.
That was a total guess. That's great.
All right. So 2-1. All right, Dan, you got a chance to tie it up here. Amanda Hunsaker graduated in 1983, according to her yearbook. What was the name of her high school?
Oh my gosh. That is absolutely not fair because I actually wrote down a note that her sister is right next to her, and I noted that she graduated in 83 in case you asked this question, but I don't know the name of the high school. Wow.
Yep, the yearbook said class of 1983, and then it said the name of the high school right under that.
Oh, no.
Sean, do you have a guess?
I don't remember. North Iredale High School. I can't remember.
Palos Verdes.
Oh,
it translated means green sticks, in case you're curious.
I was.
Nice.
Thank you.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So,
I guess I
who
won.
had 2 points?
I did.
Okay.
That's 2 weeks in
I
a
wasn't
row.
Keeping track, really. I just knew somebody had 2. So, congratulations there, Sean.
Oh, good. Don't worry, Dan.
Nice.
I'll still mail you some stickers. You're good.
I appreciate it. At least I got one. That's
Yeah.
nice.
Honestly, like the fact that I got 2 is kind of impressive because usually our games end in 1-0 or half points.
Yeah. Well, the ones you got right were liquid based, milk and beer.
That's true. I'm currently drinking an Arnold Palmer right now. So there you go. More liquid. All right. Time for this. As soon as my computer.
Excuse me while I whip this out.
Top 3. Tonight we're doing buddy cop films. We've done it before. We don't care. We're doing it again because, well, we haven't done it in a long time. And there's so many movies to choose from that this is just a fun category. So, Darin, I'm actually going to let you go first.
Okay. Do you want me to name all 3 or just the first one?
Go all 3.
Okay, well, I'm sticking with, I know some people count like Midnight Run as a buddy cop, even though neither of them are cops. So I'm sticking with movies that are about one of them, either both of them are cops, one of them is a cop, or they're either a form of a cop. So number 1, I actually have a tie. I've got Lethal Weapon 1 and 2 as my number 1.
All right.
And I don't know if we still want to talk about where we'd rank the sequels, but I do have that one as a tie. Number 2, I've got 48 Hours, just because I think there's a series called Voyeur or something like that that's on Netflix. And Walter Chaw, the critic, did an episode on 48 Hours about the racism in the movie. And if you see 48 Hours again today, it's very like brazen and it's uncomfortable as a movie because it's more sharp edge than it is funny. But again, it set the tone and it made Eddie Murphy a star. So I'm going to have 48 Hours as my second. And then for a third, I just think that the Tommy Lee Jones, Will Smith chemistry in Men in Black, I think that's maybe secondary to Gibson and Glover as far as them getting along and inspiring each other. Just at the center of a very funny movie, their characters are just well written in the middle of a well written movie. So those are my top 3: Lethal Weapon 1/2, 48 Hours, and Men in Black.
Cool. I like it. I wrote down a bunch on this because I could, and I wasn't sure what you were going to say. So I have 2 honorable mentions. Andrew, if I take one of these as you're from you, feel free to adjust. So my 2 honorable mentions are 1, Bad Boys 2. I like Bad Boys 2 better than 1, but that's fine. And my other one honorable mention is Zootopia.
Yeah.
I like that movie. Yeah. My actual number 3 is Die Hard 3. With Bruce Willis and Sam Jackson. My number 2 is Rush Hour, Jackie Chan and Chris Tucker. And my number 1 is Hot Fuzz. I love Hot Fuzz so much.
Great one.
It makes me so happy. Andrew.
Well, I too had Bad Boys 2 on my list, but I will adjust. That movie still makes me cry laughing when Martin Lawrence takes the ecstasy.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Equal to the Quaaludes in Wolf of Wall Street.
Yeah, yeah.
Number 3, I have R.I.P.D.
I saw that. That's a bad movie, but I still have fun with it.
It's a fun, bad movie, yeah.
Yeah. Number 2, speaking of bad movies, number 2, I have The Other Guys with Will Ferrell and Mark Wahlberg.
Yeah.
I gut busting laughs from that one. That's really funny.
And then number 1, I have The Last Action Hero.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. Twitter was more active on this one than it has been recently, which is great. So give me a second. This is going to take a minute. Cameron from Green Shirt Podcast says Tango and Cash, The Nice Guys, and Dead Heat. Speaking of The Nice Guys, I have a connection with that. One of my friends who was an actress that I worked with on another movie, she is the girl that's dressed up as the Native American who hits on Ryan Gosling in that movie. That's my friend Lexi. Jesse from Sudden But Inevitable and from Open Pike Night, their new show. He and Cameron have a show together called Open Pike. It's really good. He says Hot Fuzz, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, and Rush Hour. So he and I are pretty close together. Trip Rogers, our good friend and fellow America's Next Top Podcaster contestant. Tango and Cash, Running Scared, and Lethal Weapon. Binge Lord Dan says, wait, hold on, what? Did he correct himself? No? Okay, it's just a weird tweet. He wrote, Lethal Weapon, duh, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, The Nice Guys. I have a thing for Shane Black.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Tabby from the Happy Hour podcast says Hot Fuzz, not The Fuzz, no, but Hot Fuzz, Super Troopers, and The Other Guys. Heather Sachs at Dork of All Dorks says, my current top 3, which changes with my mood, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, Men in Black, Running Scared. The Porn Stash podcast, I think this is their first time participating, says Lethal Weapons 1 through 4, Beverly Hills Cop 1 and 2, and The Other Guys. And at Lee Zimmerman says 48 Hours, Running Scared, and Lethal Weapon. So thank you all so much for participating. I really appreciate that.
It's a wide range of buddy cop.
It is a wide range of buddy cop. So we're just going to take a moment here and just say, how would we rank the 4 Lethal Weapon movies? Because we are going to do more of them. I'm just making an executive decision and saying that we will do all 4 of them before we're done podcasting. But Andrew, what would you do how would you rank these?
Well, there's a special place in my heart for number 4 because I was in 8th grade when it came out, and I was at the age where I was allowed to watch a rated R movie. And so I think this might have been Lethal Weapon 4 might have been the first rated R movie I was allowed to see with my parents in the room and everything. And I remember distinctly buying the DVD myself. So there's a little bit of nostalgia for me on that one. And that was actually the first one I ever saw. I had, until I saw that one, I never saw the other 3. But I would say that one, then probably number 1, and then 2. Well, yeah, 2 and 3. So in that order. So 4, 1, 2, 3, I think.
All right, Darin.
I kind of already gave it away. I think if I had to, I'd probably prefer the second one. I just think it's an easier, more enjoyable, pleasurable watch. I think in the first, the whole part where they take Rianne hostage and they're trying to, it's so tense and it is involving, but it's exhausting in a way because it does get you involved a little. I just like that. So I would have Lethal Weapon 2 as my favorite just because I think it's a great sequel. They don't pound things. It's like an advancement of the characters. I like that it indulges in Riggs's more fun side, but then it also, again, when the twist in the movie where you find out what happened to his wife, he reverts to his dangerous self. So it has that callback to it. And then it also has the thing where Murtaugh does his neck crack at the very end. It has distinct callbacks that I think work. And then like you talked about, Sean, with Joe Pesci, I think adding him in, it kind of adds a freshness to it. So it's not just Riggs and Murtaugh kind of arguing the same thing with each other. So I love that freshness to it. So I'd have 2, and then I would have 1 because they're almost on par. And then the third one is where it gets lazy, where they start relying too much on talking about, and the Joe Pesci character, he's there for no reason. You know what I mean? And so I'd have 3 as my third favorite. And then again, Andrew, your nostalgia for the fourth one is great. I just think that to me, the fourth one always seemed like it was cobbled together from outtakes from the other 3 movies. I don't know. I think I just got tired. And again, it doesn't have the Riggs mullet. I think that's what's really missing from it. It kind of like Hercules, or Samson, it saps the power of the movie. So again, I don't fault you for having that as your favorite. That those are great reasons. So my list is 2, 1, 3, and 4.
All right. And so for me, 2 is also my favorite. And not just because the sex scene between him and that blonde was like one of the first sex scenes I ever saw on a movie.
Patsy Kensit. She was married to one of the Gallaghers from Oasis.
Oh, well, good for him. Yeah. She's a very attractive woman.
Right.
That movie, I like the second one. I would actually probably kind of echo Andrew and say that I like the fourth one too. The fourth one has a weird place in my heart too, because it was like, 1998 is when it came out. I don't think I saw it in the theater. I would have been old enough to see it in the theater. Well, not by myself. I would have been 16. I did buy this. I think this is the only one that I own on DVD. I do like asking people if they remember the first DVD they bought, because like from tape to DVD was such a huge deal. Like I remember the first DVD I bought was Romeo Must Die, which was a Jet Li film. And then the second film I bought was Gone in 60 Seconds. And then I don't remember from that. My first Blu-ray, I'm pretty sure was... No, I can't remember. I was going to say The Fifth Element, but it's not The Fifth Element. It might be. I can't remember. Anyway, why I remember one and not the other is strange to me. But I would actually probably put the fourth one. And the fourth one has problems. Chris Rock actually kind of annoys me in that movie. But
because he's not his normal Chris Rock.
I think he's too much Chris Rock. Like
the movie literally stops a few times so he can do a stand-up routine while everybody just kind of stands there and lets him do it.
Yeah. But I love the the Jet Li stuff and all that. So that one probably 2, 4, 1, and 3. In fact, the third one I've only probably seen all the way, maybe 2 or 3 times, but it has this bit where Mel Gibson has to siphon gas from a gas tank, and he gets a little bit in his mouth and he spits it out and he says, "Ugh, Exxon." The joke being that one, he's drank enough gas to know the different flavors, but 2, he says Exxon as the joke because I think we were like 5 months removed from the Exxon Valdez, or it was pretty recent, So like,
get that taste out of my mouth.
Yeah, so like let's make fun of them a little bit more, which is fine. But like that joke has stood the test of time with my dad. So like if we drink something, like legit, like we make a beverage or whatever and it tastes bad and we have to spit it back out, we always say, "Ugh, Exxon." It's just one of those jokes that work with my dad. So
awesome.
Yeah. All right, time for this.
Wait, what's supposed to happen?
We're going to give this movie a score from 0 to 10. 0 to 10. And I think Andrew will go first because why not?
Because why not? IMDb has it at a 7.6. And I think that's fair. I'm gonna go right along with it.
All right.
Maybe actually I tell you what, I'm gonna go 7.7.
Okay.
Just to be fun.
That's fine.
This movie's fun.
Darin.
Yeah.
Well, the number rankings are weird because I always consider anything a 6 or above as good movies and anything. So that's a wide range, anywhere from good to perfect. I think I would rate this as an 8, just because it does what it needs to do. It doesn't go really any further than it doesn't like break any rules or anything like that, or it doesn't like go deep. And like we talked about with the mental health or with the police state, it doesn't delve deep. It just does what it does, and it's happy to do what it does. So it gets a solid 8 for me.
All right, right on. I like this movie too. I think it's really good. I don't really have a whole lot of complaints other than what I've already said. I think an 8 is really fair. And what does that do for the math? No, that doesn't work for the math. So I'm going to give it an 8.1. That makes the math really nice. There we go. That's a nice 7.93 repeating. I think that's a good score.
Yeah.
When you've done 400 episodes, you have to find a way to make it. We're all just a little different, you know?
Yeah. Those pockets of joy. That's what you need.
Here, so the other movie that we did that's exactly the same score, a 7.93 repeating, was Shutter Island. So this is in the same world as Shutter Island. Think about that and chew on that for a second. And well, yeah,
I think so.
I agree. Let's see what else is close to it. Guns Akimbo is real close to this at 7.86.
Is that the Daniel Radcliffe movie?
Yes. Movie is so fun. It's so fun. Go watch it right now. And the last movie that's in the same ballpark would be 6 Underground. 6 Underground. Get a 7.8.
Michael Bay.
Yeah. Michael Bay, Ryan Reynolds. Did Michael Bay produce or direct it? I think he directed it. It's a straight to Netflix joint. Darin, please tell our listeners where they can find your show.
You can find me, the only real social media place I'm active on is Twitter. So you can find me at DW Lundberg. Again, Nostalgiacast is my handle. You'll see a picture of Kevin Costner in a field of corn. It's kind of my avatar there.
Yeah, I was really surprised. You don't look anything like your picture. I was a little bummed out.
I know. I'm sorry. I look more like people compare me more to Ben Affleck for some reason than Kevin Costner, which I think I'd rather be Kevin Costner. But yeah, Nostalgiacast, if you can, the link tree is there. You can look us up on Stitcher, on Apple Podcasts, on Libsyn, our main site, iHeartRadio, anything. And again, we like our title says, we take movies that we're nostalgic for and we look at them to see if they stand the test of time or if they're past their prime. We just finished our second season, I guess, if you want to call it that. And we're starting up our third next little bit, where instead of looking at 80s movies, we're going to look at 90s movies that we absolutely love. So we can actually gush about them a little more instead of nitpick them to death. So that'll be a fun upcoming season that we'll do. But yeah, we'd love to get some feedback from everybody. We'd love to get some input. Again, that's where I know you guys from is obviously our podcasting. We've crossed paths, and so we've become friendly, stuff like that. So again, we'd love to hear more from everybody and get more feedback and some interaction. Nostalgiacast.
Awesome. Yeah, go check it out. It's good stuff. It's a good show. Very, very thought-provoking stuff.
Thank you.
Unlike the lowbrow dick jokes that we do here. I'm not going to play the clip from last week. Okay.
Yeah, like Sean, I'm pretty sure you have some clips.
Yeah. No, I'm not going to play them. Oh my gosh. So that's it. That's our show. Thanks for everybody so much for listening. Next week, what are we doing? Well, I will tell you what we're doing because I have that information in front of me. We are watching The Accountant. Speaking of Ben Affleck, we're doing The Accountant with our guest Jury Room podcast, the Jury Room podcast. Very excited for The Accountant. I've seen that movie 2 or 3 times. I am a big fan of it, and I'm gonna. No, you're not wrong. Anna Kendrick is in it. She's super cute, and anything she's in, I'm willing to watch. And it also forces. I've already told my wife this. So my wife teaches children with special needs, and The Accountant. If you're unaware, Ben Affleck stars as a. He's autistic, and this movie allows my wife to kind of flex her muscles a little bit and say, hey, this is some stuff that they got right, and this is some stuff that they got wrong, and this is why the father figure is a horrible human being. So that analysis is coming next week in the form of probably words that I will read, not her actual voice, but that's fine. That's next week. In the meantime, go check out our website, cheapseatreviews.libsyn.com, facebook.com/cheapseatreviews, and of course, Twitter is @cheapseatcast. Next week, I have an announcement to make, so I'm going to tease it there. A little big thing. That's a phrase. It's a little big thing. It's a little big thing that we're doing. Something new. Real little, the little big thing. I'm very excited for this. And so I'm going to let it sit there for a week and marinate. So how about that? Darin, thank you so much for coming on. This has been a blast. So on behalf of Darin and Andrew and Sam, this is Sean saying thank you all so much for listening, and we'll see you next week.
This is Cheapseat Reviews.